Welcome to the Positively No Gambling podcast, the NFL show that is definitely not about gambling. My name's Glenn Fraser. It is August 5th, and this is the 2025 season preview for the Carolina Panthers. So as we know, we'll go through two questions from the offseason, recap 2024, preview 2025, look at some advanced stats and trends, some early against the spread leans, conclude on the big two questions, and give a prelim over-under pick. The final over-under picks part of the conference previews right before the season starts. All right, the questions for Carolina. Can they dramatically improve this defense? And is Bryce Young good actually? Some very up and down season for Young last year. I really thought that he was done after week two, but he bounced back and had a salvageable season that was perceived to be a pretty good one. We'll see how good it actually was when we dive into things. All right, 24 recap. Finished 5-12, which was good for third in the NFC South. They started off abysmal, 1-7, and they finished 4-5 to really end the season with some momentum. Something to highlight: 0-7 against playoff teams. These wins down the stretch were nice, but they came against the Saints and the Giants and the Cardinals, whose season was imploding, and the Falcons. When they had to play good playoff teams, they were often beat, sometimes completely blown out. They technically overachieved a little bit because they were 4-3 in one-score games. But they were without a doubt able to salvage the season. Things were looking horribly to start. With that season, Bryce Young's career truly, I think, was salvaged last year. Worth highlighting, this was a terrible defense. Scoring, it was the worst in the league. They let up 31 points per game. Any kind of DVOA or any other EPA stat that you want to cite, match the eye test. This was a terrible defense. All right, let's overview the 2025 depth chart for the offensive side of the ball. They really didn't lose much. They kind of swapped running backs with Dallas. They lost Miles Sanders, who went to Dallas. And in terms of additions, they definitely are trying to give Bryce Young some real receiving targets and additional rushing weapons to take the raw talent that they see and turn it into success on the field. So they added Tetaroa McMillan in the draft. They added Rico Dowdle from Dallas. Then they added Hunter Renfrow from Vegas. He's a potential, at least he's had some success in the past. And then they drafted Trevor Etienne in a very deep running backs draft. And they also drafted Jimmy Horn Jr. from that Colorado Buffaloes team, who at least early on in the offseason is sounding like he could be a steal. So that's an interesting one to look at. In terms of blue chips, there's none on this offense. This was a pretty dismal offense last year. Uh, if there's a bright spot, it's probably their guards. Some real talent there, Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. Less important position, but certainly if they want to be a good running team with Chuba Hubbard, with adding Rico Dowdle, with adding Trevor Etienne, you need a good interior line. Um, Make or break, this is one of the teams that absolutely, this is a make or break year. Bryce Young was bad in his rookie year, worse to start off his sophomore year. Looks to have some momentum. He definitely was playing better at the end of last season. But if he regresses and continues to blow games and not be able to convert big third downs, take sacks, all the bad habits that young quarterbacks can get themselves into. Can't see them. I can't see them sticking with him for too much longer. And along with him is Dave Canales. I know he just got there, but if he's not making positive progress this year, we know how their ownership is. They're not very patient, so he could be looking for a new job if he does not deliver on this offense. Now the defense. Oof. This visual just shows what this defense is. It is very few blue chips, a bunch of new guys that they're adding in, some throw in some draft picks in there. You got some real risk in the secondary, but some real talent in the secondary as well. This visual is hard to look at, and it's reflective of what this 25 defense is going to be, which is a mess. They lost nobody too consequential, but definitely names you've heard of. They released Jadeveon Clowney, who wasn't as productive as he was earlier in his career, obviously, but he's still, he's a name. They lost Xavier Woods, safety, Jordan Fuller, safety, and Shaq Thompson. These are names. This was the worst defense in football for a reason last year. So the thought is these are veterans. These are guys that are not worth re-signing. So them leaving is really of no consequence. In terms of what they've added, they made swings in free agency. Morig from Vegas, Wharton from Kansas City, Bobby Brown III from the Chargers, Christian Rosenboom from the Rams. These are linebackers. These are D linemen. These are not big names, and yet they're slotted to become starters. This very rarely works out. They drafted the draft was focused on the offense to start, obviously with drafting McMillan, but also a couple of notable draft picks that they made on the defensive side of the ball. Edge Nick Scorton, Edge Princely Amunamalian, and safety Latham Ransom. So these are guys, there's definitely some upside. I think they might have nailed their draft, which is great for this team long term. I don't know how much it means for them in 25, though. Blue chips, they re-signed J.C. Horn. Uh, Derek Brown is a high potential, talented guy who's returning from injury, who could be one of those dudes that completely turns this team around from a defensive side of the ball. So he's a notable X factor along with some of the rookie edge rushers that they got. Um, their DC, Aravo, Avero, sorry, he has a good reputation, and I think people really like his vision and his scheme. But he's in year two. Year one was the worst defense in football. We talked about the patience. If this D does not turn around, I could see either a mid-season or an end-season change with the DC at minimum. All right, previewing the schedule. This is a easy looking schedule, and this is why a lot of people are looking to the Panthers as a potential breakout team, given how Bryce Young looked at the end of last season, how they looked overall as a team at the end of last season. Either metric, it's a top five easiest schedule. Uh, Tougher at home, very easy on the road. But this could be an issue because they do not perform well on the road going back years, which when you combine that, oh, I'm sorry, they do not perform well at home against the spread. So tougher home schedule than road, mixed with just a very poor performance historically at home, this could be a absolute disaster for their home games. Uh, this looks very easy to start and could result in the Panthers are, 4-3 to start or 5-2 to start, but three of the first four games were on the road. People think New England's going to be better. People think Arizona's going to be better. People think Jacksonville's going to be better. This could be 1-3 or 0-4, and then it's the same old Panthers. So before we buy into any hype, just take reality for what it is. And the reality is the Panthers are just not very talented, especially on defense. Some of the stats from last season, Pythagorean wins 4.4, actual wins 5, really nothing. Close game, they were 4-3. The fumble differentials jumped out, plus 11. Same thing with the Bills. This will 100% revert. Doesn't mean anything other than it's going to revert and they won't get as many benefits of those fumbles in 2025. As bad as 24 was, 23 was even worse. They increased their win output by 3. Some of that tends to revert the year after. We talked about schedule, looks very easy. O-line needs to improve pass protection, but they're pretty damn good at run protection. We saw those good guards. D-line, bad pass rushers, and the worst run stop in the league. I don't see how they address those, let's be honest. Um, the there's just those bad signs regarding the regression, the fumble, the win increase. And on a team that already has a bad roster, you can't really afford too many additional areas in which you regress back to the mean or up to the mean. You don't need anything else to impact your team when you're already not very talented. Uh, Leads me to against the spread leans, there are none. This team's history of being just terrible against the spread. I'm not buying any hype. I don't think that this is a good team by any stretch. Um, the defensive additions have not moved the needle. At best, this team's top three or the third best team, sorry, in the NFC South, behind Tampa, behind Atlanta. That's at best. That's pretty bad. Um, do I think their defense got any better? No. Do I think Bryce Young is a viable long-term quarterback in the league? I don't. Uh, I'm gonna go under. It's 6.5, which I kind of get, but that's a tease. Go under. This is gonna be either the third or fourth best team in the South. Not buying any hype. Defense can't be expected to improve. T-Mac, I think is going to be good, but I don't think he'll move the needle in year one. And the run game should improve and definitely can improve, but I don't think that's going to be enough for this offense to beat the good teams in this league. So I'm not buying the hype with Carolina, and I'm going to go under. All right, tomorrow is fun one, Chicago Bears. So we will talk to you tomorrow on the when we preview the Bears over under for 25. Thanks.